For this section, we're going to talk about rounding and estimating. And I do need to remind you of something that came up in a few worksheets ago. Okay, so we talked about place value. Place value is a really important part of the rounding process. So let's go and remind ourselves of place value. So you should have this place value chart. And starting from the right and working our way left. So let me like right here. So starting from the right and working our way left, the digits have a place value of the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place. Then we get a comma. Thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, comma. Millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, comma. Billions, 10 billions, 100 billions, comma. Trillions, 10 trillions, 100 trillions. The good news is, for the most part, our numbers are not going to be in the billions and trillions. Maybe some with rounding just for the sake of practice and different place values. But the vast majority of the numbers we work with this semester are going to be much smaller than that, which is good. Okay. But do keep in mind place value. Okay. So let's go back to our current section, which is right here. Okay. So a couple of definitions. First of all, rounding is the process of approximating a number to make it easier to use and understand. This comes up a lot later on. Like I'm currently making worksheets for pre-calculus, and a lot of my directions say, solve or, whatever the direction is, and then round all answers to the nearest tenth or to two decimal places or something like that. Because frequently when we do our calculations, we may get a number with 6, 7, 8 decimal places. That's not really easy to understand and use. So we'll just sort of round it to a much closer whole number. So maybe like round it to the nearest whole number or round it to the tenth place. You're only dealing with like 1 or 2 decimal places. Just makes it easier to work with. Okay. So rounding happens all the time. We do it a lot. Now, attached to rounding is this process called estimation. So estimation is the process of rounding numbers to make performing operations easier. So for us at this point, operations are going to be addition and subtraction. We will also eventually talk about multiplication and division, okay? An estimated answer is not exact. I do need you to understand that, but it should be really close to the exact answer. Okay, so here are the steps to rounding whole numbers to a given place value. Okay, so locate the digit to the right of the given place value. So I call the digit in the place value that's given the rounding digit. Okay, so if it says round to the nearest thousandth, you want to find the digit in the thousandths place, or the hundreds place, or the tens place. Okay, so you find your rounding digit given by place value. One digit to the right tells you if you round up or down. So that's what step one is saying. Find the rounding digit and then locate the digit to the right. If the digit to the right is 5 or greater, add 1 to the rounding digit, and then everything after that becomes a 0. Okay? If the digit to the right of the rounding digit is less than 5, leave the rounding digit alone. Everything after that becomes 0. So a lot of times when we talk directions and definitions and steps, they don't totally make sense until you get into practice. So let's go ahead and get into practice. Okay, so I think for this video we have 2 examples. So example 1, Earth is 92,955,807 miles from the sun. Round this distance to the nearest. For part A, we want to round this to the nearest million. Okay, so let's think about this. We have, and I'm going to make some little tick marks. We have the ones, tens, hundreds, okay? Thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. So this digit right here is in the millions place. That's what I call the rounding digit, okay? So find your rounding digit. Step 1 says locate the digit to the right of that. Well, the digit to the right of that is a 9. If the digit to the right is 5 or greater, we add 1 to the rounding digit. So that means the 2 becomes a 3. The 9 in front of the 2 stays. The 2 becomes a 3. And then everything after that, the 9, 5, 5, 8, 0, 7, they all become zeros. So we would say that the distance from Earth to the sun is approximately 93 million, okay? So what we were really doing is we were taking this number, 92,955,807, and we were asking ourselves, is this closer to 92 million or to 93 million? In this case, it's closer to 93 million, okay? Let's look at part B. All right. For part B, we're taking the same distance, the distance from Earth to the sun, and we're going to round it to the nearest 100,000. Okay. So again, we have the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, hundred thousands. So this 9 is in the 100,000 spot. One digit to the right of that is a 5. Well, we have step 2 here that says if the digit to the right is 5 or more, you add 1 to the rounding digit. Well, what's that going to look like? So let's see here. We get 92,955,807. We know this is our rounding digit. We know that to the right of that we have a 5, so we have to add 1 to the rounding digit. Well, shoot, when I add 1 to the rounding digit, that makes it a 10. So think about how we add and carry. So 9 plus 1 is 10, so I keep a 0, I carry a 1. That makes the 2 plus 1 a 3. The 9 stays the same. And then remember, everything after the rounding digit becomes a 0. So 5, 5, 8, 0, 7, all zeros. So in this case, if we round the distance from Earth to the sun to the 100,000s place, it's also 93 million. So we were asking ourselves, is this closer to 93 million or 92,900,000? And it was closer to 93 million. Okay. Example 2, we're talking about the moon and the Earth. Okay. The moon is said to be 238,855 miles from Earth. Round this distance to the nearest, well, for part A, to the nearest 1,000. So let's see. We have the tens, the ones, the tens, the hundreds place. Then we have the thousands place. So this first 8 is the digit in the thousands place. One digit to the right of that is an 8. Okay. The directions say if the digit to the right of the rounding digit is 5 or more, we round up. So I want to go ahead and add 1 to this 8. And that tells me this is approximately 239,000. So we were basically saying, is the moon closer to 238,000 or 239,000 miles away from Earth? And it's closer to 239,000 miles away from Earth. Okay. Now, next up for part B, we're dealing with the same distance from Earth to the moon or moon to the Earth. And we want to round this to the nearest 100,000. So let's see. We've got the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s place. Okay, so the first digit, the 2, is in the 100,000s place. But the digit to the right of that tells us if we round up or down. So to the right, I have a 3. That tells me I'm going to round down because it's less than 5. So by rounding down, that means I leave the rounding digit alone. I don't touch it. Okay, and then everything after that becomes a 0. So 2 stays a 0, and then 3, 8, 8, 5, 5, or 2 stays a 2 rather, and then 3, 8, 8, 5, 5 all become zeros. So if we're rounding this to the nearest 100,000, what we're asking ourselves, is this closer to 200,000 or to 300,000? In this case, it's much closer to 200,000. Now notice for all of these answers, I used this like little wavy equal sign. That wavy equal sign tells the reader that we've rounded. It just means this is approximately equal to. So we know the distance from Earth to the sun is approximately 93 million. It's not exactly 93 million, it's approximately, so we use that wavy equal sign, okay? So make sure you practice your rounding, know how to round up, know how to round down, and know how to do something like example 1, part B, where the rounding digit is a 9 and you have to round up, okay? So if you need to remind yourself of place value, remind yourself of place value, and then remind yourselves of the steps used for rounding.